The midday heat hung over downtown Austin, Texas. The scorching sun reflected off the windows of the skyscrapers and made the asphalt vibrate with waves of heat. Traffic flowed slowly, while pedestrians sought refuge in the shade of awnings and cafes. In the midst of this scenario, Malcolm Hayes crossed the busy avenue towards a branch of Western Horizon Credit Union, one of the city's community banks. At 45, Malcolm was a visionary businessman. Founder of Hayes & Kosers, a network of startups focused on social innovation, he believed in the power of financial inclusion. His success had started small, but with years of dedication and strategic partnerships, his company had become one of the most respected in the region. Malcolm had always made a point of keeping his company close to the community, investing in small cooperatives and encouraging local growth. But recently, something was bothering him. Small reports emerged among its employees and acquaintances. Difficulties in obtaining loans, unexplained restrictions on financial transactions, and visibly unequal service depending on the customer's profile. As a leader who championed transparency, Malcolm could not ignore these signs, so he decided to test the system for himself. He dressed simply, jeans, a plain t-shirt, and a worn cap, and went to a branch of his own bank. No agenda, no warnings, just an ordinary customer. As soon as he entered the agency, he felt the atmosphere change. The cold air conditioning contrasted with the heat outside, and the room carried the strong smell of cheap coffee mixed with the scent of paper money. Behind the counters, cashiers and managers served customers with automatic smiles and rehearsed words. He approached the line and waited. As soon as it was his turn, a young cashier, Kyle, in his early 20s and looking tired, looked up and made a brief visual assessment of Malcolm before speaking. "Good afternoon. How can I help you?" "I want to withdraw $10,000. Kyle's expression hardened. He blinked a few times before responding. "You will need to fill out this form and present a photo ID. Malcolm expected this." He handed over his ID along with his bank card. Kyle scanned the document, then gave it a wary glance before asking, "Is it a personal or business account?" "Guys." Kyle nodded slowly, but didn't enter anything into the system. Instead, he twirled the card between his fingers. "Just a moment, sir. I need to check something." He got up and disappeared through a side door. Malcolm crossed his arms and took in his surroundings. In a few minutes, the answer would come, but he already knew this was not standard protocol. Malcolm kept his expression neutral as he watched Kyle disappear behind the side door. Time passed, slowly. 1 minute, 2, 5. The conversations around him continued, but he felt the discreet gazes of other customers and employees focused on him. On the other side of the branch, a middle-aged man in a well-fitting gray suit was finishing up with another teller. No extra questions, no additional forms, just a cordial handshake and a professional smile. Malcolm felt the knot in his stomach tighten. He already knew the answer, but he needed confirmation. The side door finally opened, and Kyle reappeared accompanied by a woman with dark hair tied in a bun. His name glittered on the golden badge, Patricia Langford, Relationship Manager. She carried a practiced expression of professionalism, but her eyes studied Malcolm warily. "Good afternoon, sir. Hayes, correct?" Malcolm nodded. "Yes, Malcolm Hayes. I'm here to withdraw $10,000 from my personal account." Patricia smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "Right, Mr. Hayes. Just to be sure, could you confirm the origin of the funds?" Malcolm blinked, in surprise. "The origin of the funds?" "Yes." Patricia crossed her hands on the counter. "It's a security procedure. Large cash withdrawals require some checks." Malcolm leaned forward slightly. "I've had an account here for over 10 years. My balance is well above this amount. Furthermore, I have withdrawn larger amounts before without having to answer this question." Patricia's discomfort was evident. She exchanged a quick look with Kyle before continuing. "We understand, Mr. Hayes, but each transaction is analyzed individually." Malcolm took a deep breath. I understand. If so, can I see this policy in writing? Patricia hesitated. Mr. Hayes, we don't have this policy written that way, but it is an internal precautionary procedure. Malcolm felt a shiver run down his spine. That was it. The perfect excuse to make it difficult for certain customers to access their own money. He could pressure them right there, create a scandal. But no. He wanted to see how far this would go. Right. What else do I need to do to access my own money? Patricia smiled as if the situation was under control. If you can present proof of residence and a second document with photo, we can continue with the analysis. Malcolm laughed through his nose, shaking his head. Does this mean that I now need proof of residence to make a withdrawal from my account? Just a safety measure, Patricia repeated, imperturbably. Malcolm looked around. The man in the suit who had been attended to earlier was already leaving, without questions, without obstacles. Hypocrisy burned inside him, but he remained calm. He was going to see how far they would take this charade. Malcolm took a deep breath, keeping his expression calm. He knew this game. The problem is that Patricia and Kyle had no idea who they were trying to fool. So, to recap, he said, crossing his arms, I presented my identity and my bank card. I have been a customer for over 10 years. I have sufficient funds in the account, but do you still need proof of residence to release a withdrawal to me? Patricia smiled in a practiced way. We just follow protocols, Mr. Hayes. Malcolm raised an eyebrow. And are these protocols applied to all customers or just some? Patricia blinked, slightly disconcerted. These are security procedures. He nodded slowly. Of course. I'll just record this. Before Patricia could react, Malcolm took out his cell phone and started recording. Mr. Hayes, please, recording is not allowed inside the agency, she said, her voice a little less controlled. But I just want to understand it correctly, said Malcolm, aiming the camera at himself. I'm at a bank where I've been a customer for 10 years and I'm being prevented from accessing my own money without plausible justification. Kyle became visibly uncomfortable, looking away from Patricia. She recovered quickly. Mr. Hayes, this is not how we deal with our customers. Malcolm tilted his head. No? So tell me, Patricia, why did the man who was here before me withdraw money without going through this verification? The manager hesitated. I cannot comment on another customer's account. Malcolm nodded, as if he had received the answer he was hoping for. Right, so I'll need to speak to a superior. Patricia smiled tensely. I am responsible for this agency. Malcolm laughed through his nose. Excellent. So you can authorize my withdrawal now? Patricia swallowed. The weight of the camera on her was visible. Before she could respond, an agency security guard approached. Is everything okay here? Asked the burly man with a badge that said J. Duncan. Malcolm didn't look away from Patricia. I still don't know. I'm waiting to see if I can get my own money. Duncan exchanged a look with Patricia, clearly seeking a command. But the manager hesitated, realizing how bad the situation already seemed. Malcolm took a step back, raising his cell phone a little higher. All good. If they can't release my withdrawal, maybe I should resolve this another way. He paused the recording and quickly typed a message. What are you doing? Patricia asked, trying to appear calm. Malcolm smiled. Just sending this video to the bank's press office. Patricia's face turned pale. The silence in the agency became heavy. Patricia, once confident, now seemed unable to hide her tension. The security guard, J. Duncan, stepped back slightly, assessing the situation. Kyle looked at the floor, clearly regretting calling the manager. Malcolm put the phone in his pocket. He didn't need to post the video yet. The threat alone had made Patricia reconsider. Mr. Hayes, she began, trying to regain control of the conversation. I'm sure we can resolve this without involving the press. He tilted his head. "I hope so too, Patricia, but that depends on you." She took a deep breath and gestured to Kyle. "Check Mr. Hayes and release the loot." Kyle nodded quickly and went back to the computer. Malcolm noticed that the manager's voice was slightly shaking. The game had changed. As Kyle typed, Patricia cleared her throat. "Understand, Mr. Hayes, our intention was never to cause trouble. We just follow safety protocols." "Interesting," Malcolm said, crossing his arms. "So why was this protocol only applied to me and not to the other client who left recently?" Patricia opened her mouth to respond, but hesitated. I said I can't comment on other clients, but can you deny services without plausible justification?" Malcolm arched his eyebrow. She looked away. Kyle typed faster and faster, as if he wanted to end it as soon as possible. The cashier finally looked at Malcolm. "Your transaction has been approved. We can release the withdrawal now." Malcolm nodded. "Excellent." Kyle took the money out of the safe and placed it on the counter, counting each bill slowly. The tension in the room began to dissipate, but Malcolm knew that the episode didn't end there. He took the money and put it in his wallet. Then, without rushing, he turned to Patricia. "I won't forget this, and rest assured that the board won't either." The manager's face turned pale. "Mr. Hayes, Malcolm raised his hand, stopping her. "You don't need to explain yourself. The problem is bigger than you. But I intend to resolve this." Patricia bit her lower lip as if she wanted to argue, but she knew she had no more room for it. He took a deep breath and turned to leave. As he walked through the agency's door, he felt the eyes of employees and customers fixed on him. But unlike the beginning, now it was a look of respect, and maybe even a little fear, because Malcolm wasn't going to let this go. Malcolm left the agency, but his mind was still racing. What had just happened was not an isolated case. It was a reflection of a systemic problem, and he knew exactly what to do next. As he got into the car, he picked up the phone and made a direct call to Rebecca Lee, the Chief Compliance Officer at Western Horizon Credit Union. "Rebecca, we need to talk. Now." Her voice sounded surprised but serious. "Malcolm? What happened?" "I was at one of our agencies today as a regular customer. I tried to make a withdrawal and was treated as if I was trying to commit fraud." There was a tense silence on the other end of the line. "Tell me exactly what happened." Malcolm recounted the events, detailing each moment of subtle discrimination disguised as standard procedure. As he spoke, he heard Rebecca's heavy breathing, feeling indignation rising in her as well. "This is unacceptable," she said finally. "I will call a meeting with the ethics committee and we will review all care practices." "It's not enough." Rebecca hesitated. "What do you suggest?" Malcolm glanced at the agency's facade in the rearview mirror. "I want a complete audit of all branches. I want concrete numbers on how many customers face difficulties like this, and I want every manager and employee to go through new service and equity training." Rebecca sighed. "This is going to make waves, Malcolm." He smiled coldly. "Excellent. It's time to change the tide." The next day, an official email was sent to the entire organization. Immediate restructuring, new customer service code. The news spread quickly. Employees were called to emergency meetings. Managers had to explain their methods. And Patricia Langford. She was removed from her position while an internal investigation took place. Ultimately, Malcolm felt the battle was not yet won. But one thing was certain. They would never treat a customer the way they did again. The change came faster than Malcolm expected. In less than a week, the central offices of the Western Horizon Credit Union, they were in an uproar. The audit revealed a worrying pattern. Customers with specific profiles faced more obstacles in financial transactions than others. Complaints similar to Malcolm's, previously ignored, were now being looked at seriously. Rebecca Lee, true to her word, organized a special committee to review the institution's practices. Malcolm was invited to participate, but he wanted more than formal meetings. He wanted action. So he proposed something radical, a mystery shopping program. Ordinary people would be sent to different agencies to test the service without the employees knowing. Any indication of discrimination or unnecessary barriers would be documented and addressed directly with management. The idea was approved immediately. Meanwhile, manager Patricia Langford has been officially removed from her position. The bank decided not only to remove her, but also to review all the managers under her supervision. Kyle, the cashier who had initiated the discrimination case, received a formal warning and was placed in intensive new training on service equity. But the impact was not just inside the bank. Malcolm's story ended up leaking to the press. A local journalist published a story about the businessman who exposed the hypocrisy of the banking system, and the case quickly gained national attention. With his attention focused on the company, the CEO of Western Horizon Credit Union made a public statement announcing new policies to ensure transparency and fairness in care. The bank is committed to offering equal access to all customers, regardless of appearance or social status. Malcolm watched the announcement with a half smile. He knew he wouldn't solve all the problems at once, but this was a first step. And for him, that was enough for now. 2 months later, Malcolm was sitting on the terrace of an Austin cafe, watching the city go by. The wind was blowing lightly, and the noise of urban life mixed with the distant sound of a saxophone playing on the corner. He could finally breathe a little easier. The mystery shopper program was in full operation. Weekly reports showed remarkable progress. Customer service had improved, invisible barriers were being removed, and most importantly, employees were being held accountable for their actions. Rebecca Lee had updated him that morning. We received the first reports. Some agencies still have problems, but the number of incidents has dropped dramatically. And there's more. After the press broke the story, other banks began to review their policies too. Malcolm smiled. Good news. But it's not over yet. Rebecca laughed. You'll never settle down, will you? He took a sip of his coffee before answering. Not while there is room for change. At the same moment, his phone vibrated. It was a message from an unknown number. Mr. Hayes, I wanted to thank you. My grandmother always had difficulty withdrawing money without being questioned. Today, she walked into a Western Horizon branch and was treated with respect, without any extra questions. I don't know if it was because of what you did, but I wanted you to know that it made a difference. Malcolm looked at the screen for a moment before smiling. That was why he did what he did. He typed a short reply. We've made a difference, but there's still more to be done. Putting his phone in his pocket, he finished his coffee and stood up. There was more work to do. There always was. But for today, he would enjoy this moment.